All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here. My name is Martin Merrell. I'm a sales engineer with StorageCraft. I've already taken some time to share a little bit of the history of StorageCraft and kind of lay the groundwork for what it is that we're doing. But right now in this particular session, I want to focus on where it is that StorageCraft is actually going. And we're going to talk a little bit about what StorageCraft is actually doing. So I'm going to stand up here just so you can kind of, talk to me and look at me here for a second, because I'm not going to demo anything just yet, but I do want everybody to understand and know, really what it is that StorageCraft does. I mentioned in the initial segment here that StorageCraft is a backup and disaster recovery software company. Okay, the core solution that we put out is something that we call Shadow Protect SPX. Now, SPX is it's an image-based backup. It's an agent-based backup. You do deploy it on each machine that needs to be backed up, and it's going to take a complete image of the system. We snapshot at the sector level, and we do a fantastic job. One of the real strengths of the product is the fact that we can do a restore. And later on, as I close the segment, I will actually introduce you to Shadow Protect SPX, and you'll be able to see what it looks like and some of the things that it can do. But one of the things that I really wanted to focus on, and this is something that is really going to help define where our organization is going, okay, and what it is that we really want to do. When we think about backup and disaster recovery, we're thinking more about, it's not just file and folder restore anymore. It's not just good enough to say, okay, let's get a backup of all my important files. With the fact that we have so much critical data out there, and the fact that we have so many critical systems supporting them, if any of those critical systems were to fail, what kind of damage is that going to do to your organization? If you have this, let's just even take just a standard Exchange server, right? This can be one of the key the key servers, one of the key services that your organization is going to be offered, right? If you lose your email, what kind of effect is that going to have on you? Especially if we're talking about an enterprise or even just a small business. If you lose your Exchange server, your productivity suffers. You can't really do the work that you need to. If you're not being productive, your organization's not making any money. And at some point in time, it really is just a matter of time where you're going to start seeing some real negative effects, and you're not going to be able to, you may not be able to recover it, at least not for a long, long time. Take your CRM server, the database that's powering your CRM. If that were to fail, what happens then? So it's no longer just a matter of backing up your individual pieces of data. What StorageCraft has done with our core solution is the ability to not just say, hey, I've got your backup data here, let's restore it. I've got your backup files, everything that's critical, it's safe, and we're not just going to restore it after we rebuild a system. We are actually going to have an image that can rebuild a system in a single process, first of all. But even if you're not ready to do that, let's say you actually had a physical machine that died and you got nothing to replace it with, we have the technology that allows us to bring it back up as a virtual machine in a matter of just a few minutes, and that's our virtual boot technology. And again, I'll talk more about that. But along the same lines of this whole idea about disaster recovery, we're also thinking business continuity. It's, a single system fails, that's usually bad enough, but let's say your entire data center, your entire server farm gets flooded because, the worst happened. A major flood happens, your data center just happened to be in a flood-prone area, and it gets flooded and you lose everything. Now you've got nothing. You don't have your backups, you don't have your servers. What are you going to do? Well, a good, solid disaster recovery program is going to have that backup data sitting off-site, right? That's something that everybody should be doing. But that data is only as good as how well you can actually restore from it, right? How long is it going to take? What I'm going to focus on right now is a service that StorageCraft has been offering for a few years, but it's just gotten better and better over time, and it's our cloud technology, okay? StorageCraft, not only can we take a backup of any device, both either physical or virtual, but we can take that backup data and we can replicate it into a purpose-built cloud, which is a data center that has all the technology needed to help bring up those backup images as virtual machines literally in a matter of a few minutes. And not only can we have a virtual machine brought up, but we can actually set up networking parameters that allow your outside users to be able to directly attach to those machines and gain access to those critical services that they need in the event that you've actually had a catastrophic disaster. And so that's actually what we're going to be talking about, at least right now. We're going to be talking about the StorageCraft Cloud. All right. Now, as I said before, StorageCraft does most of its business through its partners. All right, we have VARs, we have MSPs, and all of our partners have access to a portal which allows them to be able to perform all this. Before I jump into this, though, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? Any questions about anything I've addressed so far?
Just a quick one. When you say cloud, are we talking my choice of cloud, or are you talking a managed service from StorageCraft for this?
Yeah, it's a managed service from StorageCraft. This is a purpose-built cloud that StorageCraft has actually built from the ground up. Okay. Well, that's a great question. Our cloud data center is located in the Rocky Mountains around Salt Lake City. That's our primary data center. We have a secondary data center that acts as a mirror site that can be found in southern Georgia area. So we've actually got it in 2 different parts of the country. It's not all at one location. We can actually replicate the data in 2 places.
Data requirements where they have to reside, the data has to reside in Europe or something like that. How do you guys deal with that?
That's a great question. We actually have a data center in Europe. Now, where in Europe it is, I'm not exactly sure. I think it's in the United Kingdom somewhere. I don't know. I might be wrong about that, but it's in Europe. We got one in Europe. We've got one in Australia right now as well. So we have a cloud service available in Australia as well. And again, I'm not exactly sure the geography it's at. But
and you're saying you can actually run the VMs in your purpose-built cloud?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As well as bare metal.
Pardon me?
As well as bare metal.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. So here's how it works. So you can kind of get your head around it here. So StorageCraft offers Shadow Protect SPX, which is our core product. It's an image-based backup. It supports both physical and virtual environments. All right. So it does require an agent. You are going to actually install our software inside, whether it's either the physical machine or the virtual guest. Okay. We don't care what virtualization environment this is. This can be an ESX server. This can be Hyper-V. This can be VirtualBox. I mean, it could be anything. We don't care about the virtual environment. And that's one of the things that makes our solution really great, is because we are very flexible. When we create a backup, we're taking the exact same image format regardless of what environment we are backing up from, okay? In fact, to be more specific, Shadow Protect SPX creates what we call an SPF file, Shadow Protect full backup, and then it's supported with incrementals that are called SPI files, but they're all essentially the same format, and they all work together, and our software doesn't care whether it was a virtual or physical environment to begin with, all right? We have the technology then to be able to replicate this data into the StorageCraft Cloud, and it's replicated in its native format, these backup images that gets into the cloud, but we have the technology built into the cloud then to be able to launch a virtual machine as needed. Now, if that's not what we need, we have the ability to say, let's open up these images and retrieve files and folders if we need them. So all of that is actually built into the cloud, and that's one of the things that we're offering that we really haven't seen in a lot of other solutions. Again, that are image-based or whatever. In fact, I will go ahead and demo what that cloud looks like. That's actually what we're going to be seeing here to begin with. But
so the agent supports Windows, Linux, and
right now it supports both Windows and Linux. We don't have a Mac agent, but we are Windows and Linux. And when it comes to Linux, we're talking specifically about CentOS, Red Hat, and Ubuntu. I know SUSE is on the roadmap, but we don't do anything for SUSE just yet. So,
in a VM environment, does it support like VDI and things of that nature?
It doesn't care. I mean, it doesn't care. As far as the agent is concerned, it's launched. It's running as a service within whatever environment is supporting it. So it's as far as it knows, it goes. I'm on a Windows 10 machine, or I'm on a Windows 2016 server. That's what it knows, and that's how it operates.
So you mentioned that you can get granular down to the file or folder level, so this item level recovery.
Yeah.
Can you clarify what you mean by you haven't seen this in other?
Okay, so I'm talking about what's actually happening within the StorageCraft Cloud. I mean, there's a lot of image-based backup solutions that are out there. You really can't find them. And when it comes to the core features of a software, you're going to see a lot of similarities. Okay, but what I'm referring to specifically within the StorageCraft Cloud is the ability to not just store that backup data, which, again, a lot of people do. A lot of people will actually choose to put their backup data on an Amazon, the AWS or Azure, and they'll save their data there. But the thing that's unique about the StorageCraft Cloud is we'll take that backup data, we'll keep it, but we have the software and the intelligence built into the cloud that allows you to access that data from a portal, using a web browser, and you'll be able to say, okay, I can see my backup images there, I can see the different recovery points that I can restore from, and if I'm in a situation where I actually need to bring a system up as a virtual machine. I've got a critical machine that, thank you very much, I got a critical machine that has failed and I need to fail over to it and I can't do it locally. We can launch that virtual machine directly from our backup images without any prior conversion needed. All we have to do is click, say go at the recovery point that we want. That machine is going to boot up and it's going to be available. It's going to be part of its own private network within the cloud. We have the ability to set up a firewall within the cloud that we can connect to. We've got VPN technology that we can set up, which allows you to either route your data through a single router into the cloud, or if you don't have that, you can't get that set up fast enough, we can do an open VPN connection and make sure that your critical, your important clients have access into those machines and they can do what it is that they need to do. In fact, what I'll be showing you today is our open VPN connection. You can actually see, once I've got a machine running, how I can just be right here, pass files back and forth into it and everything. And it was really just backup data to start with.
Yeah, so when you say OpenVPN, you mean OpenVPN, the protocol?
I mean OpenVPN, the protocol, as well as the little applet that you can download from openvpn.com.
Okay,
yes.
That's awesome, because you can get that on like every platform.
Every platform.
That's a good choice.
In terms of the target as well, so you talked about, it sounds like the target for the VMs for the restores would be in your cloud, but do you offer a restore to any other clouds, like say a public cloud service,
Right.
AWS, that kind of
It's a great question. Yes, we do. We can replicate to any other cloud that is needed. Of course, we can't guarantee that our technology, our recovery technology, is going to be there, okay? But if it's just a matter of, hey, I got backup data and I need to send it someplace and keep it safe, absolutely. We've got connectors into the AWS cloud.
When you are saying you're replicating to any other cloud, so are you replicating from your cloud to another cloud, or is it from the on-premises?
From the premise, right. Yeah, so yeah, for your local storage, so you're going to back up to local storage, whether it's a NAS device or SAN or some shared storage, right? We will replicate from there to pretty much wherever it is that you need to go. Now, we actually have a built-in connector to AWS specifically, and that's a recent addition.
So are you running your software stack in AWS? If I do,
No.
Okay.
Right, we are not. Right now, it would just be essentially dumb storage.
So it's just
in
kind of a data
AWS.
vault at this point.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I've had a lot of conversations with customers about wanting to do backup, replication up to cloud, DR failover. There's a lot of players in that space right now. I mean, do you see you going down the path of standing up your stack on AWS, Azure, GCP? Because it seems to me I'd have a hard time convincing somebody to run my environment in AWS, but then back up and do recovery in your cloud, and all of a sudden that gets really messy on networking extensions, connectivities, data
Yeah.
access, all that stuff.
So, I mean, that's a really good point, and it's actually a really valid question. The fact is we're looking into that. We don't have it there. It's not like you can stand up your VMs within the AWS cloud reading directly from our backup
Right.
images,
Gotta
at
do
least
a
not right
conversion.
yet.
Right.
We got to do some stuff. I'm sure that when it comes down to it, we're probably going to be utilizing APIs
Yeah.
and that type of thing. They're going to enable that for us, but right now we don't
Okay.
do something like that. So, but again, these are the types of things that we are looking at as we move forward. And it's not just going to be AWS. Azure, they've got themselves a huge footprint too. Microsoft's doing a fantastic job, and it's very likely we're going to be looking into the Azure space as well. So that's a great question. How else? How we doing? Other questions?
Is there some problem with licensing? I mean, so the customer has a VM vSphere license on Enterprise, and now he's going to be running vSphere effectively on your purpose-built cloud.
So that is not something that we run into. Typically, it's not like we're going to have you boot your vSphere server in the StorageCraft Cloud. It's more likely you'll be backing up your critical machines that you're running physically, or that you're running locally on your vSphere, vSphere ESXi server. We'll replicate the backup images of your VMs into the StorageCraft Cloud. We'll just simply use the virtualization technology in the StorageCraft Cloud to bring them up. So it shouldn't affect anything that has to do with ESX or ESXi. When it comes to restoring to the cloud.
Is this like a temporary solution, or is this more of a permanent thing? Can I run this thing for a week or two while my fire blasted data center gets rebuilt?
It's meant to be temporary. This is not meant to be a permanent restore. And here's the reason why. We want everybody to understand that our cloud is very powerful. It does some fantastic things, but its primary focus is, I got to get these systems going. I mean, I just had a major calamity. My building just burnt to the ground, and I've got all this data, I've got all these servers, I've got all these things that are running my business, and they're no longer available to me. And not only that, you know what? This fire burned up my backups too. I've got nothing. All right, what we can do is we can log into the StorageCraft Cloud, launch the critical machines. In fact, we have a virtual machine policy that you can set up beforehand and click go in the event that you have that kind of a disaster, and those machines are going to spin up automatically in the order that you set them up to do so that all you got to do is click go, make sure you start the network within the Cloud Services portal. That data is up and running in a matter of a few minutes, and depending on how many machines you've got, what kind of dependencies you get, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 15, could be less than that. A lot of it just depends on what you've got. But those machines are up. You've got a network now that's been set up, and you can provide access and have those critical services running, even though you've lost everything locally. And it is meant to be temporary, so that at some point, the understanding is, well, I'm going to rebuild my business. I'm going to have a new place to do business at. We'll get some new equipment we're going to restore to. But in the interim, you've got access to the critical data.
How do you replicate back?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. We don't replicate back automatically, but we do have a program that allows you to restore. We have a bare metal recovery drive system or program that once it's time to restore, you say, okay, I got my systems in place. You call us, we'll overnight a drive or a series of drives to you that have all of your backup data on it. It's all physically contained in the drive. The drives are they're configured in such a way that they actually have a recovery environment built into them. So all you got to do is plug it into machine number 1 or create a virtual machine, make sure that it's reading directly from your backup image. It'll boot from it, and you can perform the restore just right there. It'll go ahead and take all the data, copy it where it needs to go. Part of that process, which really makes this cool because it's going to really minimize your downtime, when you start this recovery process, you're actually going to keep your virtual machine running in the cloud. Okay, you're going to get the drive, the virtual machine is still running, you're going to start your restore process, that VM is still running in the cloud, you haven't lost any time. It's going to get to a certain point during that recovery process where it'll say, okay, everything on this drive has been restored. Do you still have a VM running in the cloud? It'll actually prompt you and you'll say yes. It'll then connect to the cloud, grab a final snapshot of what that machine looks like. It will finally apply it during that recovery process. Once that happens, shut the VM down in the cloud, and you're good to go.
Is there disruption? It sounds like they would have to incur some downtime to...
You will get over phase, yeah.
I missed some of that.
It's going to have to be one cutover phase, or you will be cutting off service.
You will be cutting off at some point, yes,
okay.
yeah. But the whole idea, though, is we're going to minimize that. I mean, to the smallest segment of time that we can.
And I am really confused as to how you handle IP issues.
That was...
Okay, so the StorageCraft Cloud is going to do most of the work, okay? When it comes to IP address, we're talking about, my actual physical Exchange server is this IP address, but now it's in the cloud and it's completely different.
Right.
I've got to redirect my traffic. There's going to be some work. You are going to have to redirect. You're going to have to change your DNS servers. There is going to be some upfront work. The whole idea is hopefully that we're dealing with IT professionals who really understand that to begin with. But what we're doing here is we're providing a way for you to keep your business going, despite the fact that you've got nothing.
But
right?
if you were able to launch that OpenVPN connection from, say, the same subnet on which that server was originally sitting, would the VPN IP address accommodate for that in some way?
The way that it is set up, it probably would not. I would not count on that to happen. So that's a good question. I think it's definitely a valid point, and these are definitely the questions that you should be asking. So this is great. Other questions?
Just brief follow-on is, can I set up an L2 bridge over OpenVPN?
I know technically I can. With your cloud, could I do an OpenVPN L2 bridge?
Remind me about the L2 bridge.
So that'd be sharing the same subnet across both.
Layer 2.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to remember. We can set up an IPsec connection, router to router, and I don't believe so, actually. No, I don't think it is. I think ultimately what's going to happen is you will simply have a new network
You have a new subnet.
to connect to.
Okay.
Yep, I think that's what it is. Right.
Some applications or some services like Active Directory and things like that don't really like being backed up and restored.
They hate it, man.
Do you offer the ability to run in your cloud some additional IaaS VMs? So for example, AD, or if somebody wants to have log shipping of a SQL database or those kind of things when you're not actually in a disaster?
If you're not actually in a disaster, we would never really suggest that, to be quite honest with you. But as far as the cloud goes, our ability is specific to bringing up the machines that you actually have backups for. and if you need to make adjustments, you'd have to do that within the machine itself, within the Active Directory server
So
itself.
can you test the disaster recovery scenario?
Yes, you absolutely can. In fact, that's definitely something that we suggest. If you're going to sign up for the cloud and you know that you're planning on, or you're going to, you've signed up so that you can have that capability. That's part of our cloud premium service, by the way. We offer 3 different service levels. That's our top level service. But yeah, we absolutely suggest test
That
it.
brings up the whole question. How's this service priced?
So the service is priced per machine, and the data associated with it up to a terabyte. All right, at a certain price. Now, if it goes beyond a terabyte as far as the total data specific to that machine that's been replicated, then there is some, I think it's per gig pricing that's enabled, but I don't know the specifics. I'm just a lowly sales engineer, and I talk tech, our account managers. They're the ones that do all the fancy numbers and stuff, so that's...
That includes the cloud disaster recovery capability as well as the backup?
Yeah, so we have what we call our cloud bundle. And it's offered through our MSP program. The MSP program allows for you to purchase, or I guess, on a monthly basis, pay to keep your service active. Okay, and there's a monthly fee that bundles it all up. It pays for the Shadow Protect SPX license per machine, as well as the cloud storage per machine.
Are there any SLAs around that actual boot time? So if I know that I have to fail over to you guys, how long would it typically take to boot up based on mine?
Yeah, somewhere in our agreement there is an SLA, but I don't know that I've ever really found out what that is. I think our SLA is, mostly just to cover ourselves, probably an hour. But it should be much sooner than that.
So the RTO is an hour?
No, it's actually, the RTO is actually much less than that. But I'm guessing in order to cover our bases,
The
probably gave us an hour.
RTO.
Like that's my unintellectual way of saying I really don't know what our SLA is when it comes right down to the cloud.
But
I just know that it's fast,
It's not synchronous replication here. You're doing asynchronous replication of the snapshots from on-premise to your cloud. Is that how this is working?
Well, okay. So explain what you mean by the asynchronous. Make sure I'm on the same page with you.
Well, I mean, the storage perspective, there's synchronous and asynchronous replication. Synchronous replication actually maintains the same data at 2 different locations.
Okay.
Asynchronous maintains that data, but somewhat delayed.
Yeah,
Usually using snapshots to copy over.
Right. It would be the asynchronous option. Yeah. So the way that all sets up, and I can even show you how that sets up. It is an FTP connection into the cloud. Okay. And the way that it works, our management software, there's a tool called Image Manager, which actually verifies that backup image chain locally to make sure the backup file is in good shape. But it also performs the replication. And what Image Manager does is it actually creates a consolidation point at the end of each day, so that you can go to that consolidated recovery point during a recovery process instead of having to worry about any individual smaller incrementals that might have happened. And so it's that consolidated file on a daily basis that gets sent into the cloud.
What type of RPOs do you normally see customers getting? Are they doing dailies, or are they going like 5 minutes?
So we can with our core software, the Shadow Protect, the software that starts it all, we can do backups as often as every 15 minutes.
15?
Yes, we can do a 15-minute RPO, and then we have the capability to send those immediately into the cloud. It's there. We don't consider that a best practice, because that creates more recovery points in the cloud that we have to deal with and consolidate with and that type of thing, and that just causes more overhead.
So is that like a nightly sync then to?
So typically it's the nightly sync, okay? Yeah, so good question, excellent question. Man, this is great. I don't have to show you guys anything, I'm just gonna answer a bunch of questions.
What's your average customer size as far as servers protected?
Okay, so our average size, servers protected, I would say we're probably looking at 20 to 30.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing for a long for
20, 30
a
what?
while.
Virtual machines, terabytes?
These would be servers. And this is me based on my experience.
Yeah.
I do a lot of my stuff in a closet. I don't really get out and talk directly to and gain relationships with a lot of the clients and partners. But that's been my experience. You could probably ask a number of other sales engineers, and they may give you something different.
It's all about your worldview.
It's my worldview, right? Yeah, that's a good question.
I'd like to know
Martin's
kind of
worldview.
around what your largest cloud customer is as well. Kind of how much data you're ingesting on a day-to-day basis.
I can't say that I know. I can't say that I know what our largest cloud customer is. That's a good question. But I'm going to say this. The thing that is the reason that I wanted to share our cloud solution with you first and let you know what it is that we offer here is because it's our cloud solution and the capabilities that we have here that we think are really going to help take StorageCraft to a whole new level. You know, StorageCraft, like I said, it's 10 years old. We've been working for a little while. I mean, for most of our time in kind of the small to medium business space, but we've now got the stuff that's really taken us to more enterprise level. This is a solution then. You could replicate 150, 200, 1,000 machines into the StorageCraft Cloud, set up a virtual machine policy, hit go. We'll boot them all up. You don't have to sit there and click boot, 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 boot. It'll go ahead and take care of it for you. We've got the means, the ability for you to be able to have them all network together, provide access to them, and this is actually something that nobody else is actually doing right now. I mean, certainly not the way that we do it, and not nearly as reliably as we can do it. So, how are we doing?
One more question when you're talking about local backups, then nightly sync to the cloud, which brings to mind, where do I put this?
Where do you put the backup data?
Where's my local data
Your
store?
local data? That's a great question.
Bring your own storage?
Okay.
Or ExtraBlocks?
So, yeah, okay, that's really where ExtraBlocks, that's where ExtraBlocks is really coming into the equation. You know, ExtraBlocks is still a new acquisition for us. We're really trying to find our footing and identify exactly, you know, all the great things we're going to be able to do with it. But yeah, the idea is we want to have integration with ExtraBlocks. ExtraBlocks can do so many fantastic things. Its deduplication capability is great. The fact that it's scale-out storage is fantastic, right? And so now just figuring out how our core solution and ExtraBlocks is going to merge together. This is where we're currently putting our minds together trying to do. And I know for a fact we got some exciting stuff on our roadmap that I'm not allowed to talk about right now that I've heard about, I've actually seen some small demos of, and it's actually really exciting. Okay, I mean, this stuff that we're talking about in the cloud, this is great, but what we're going to be able to do here with this ExtraBlocks product, based on what I've seen, is actually going to be really exciting. So hold your breath, that's something for a later time, but...
So today, where would that storage?
So right now, we can back up to anything with a spindle when it comes right down to it. I mean, if you're gonna say, what can I back up to? The only real restriction is we don't communicate with tape devices. So, you know, if you have a tape infrastructure, if you have a tape infrastructure, I'm sorry, that's kind of out of the question. Although it's funny, we get in there and we take our backups and, you know, people who may have been using Backup Exec or something, they've got this huge, they've invested, you know, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in their tape. Sometimes they'll keep it around and they'll just archive their backup images to tape, and now they've got, you know, so they still utilize it. I see that happen a lot. But it's very common to back up to NAS devices, to storage servers. In fact, one of the models that our MSPs like to push is the idea of a BDR, where they'll configure a storage server, you know, put our recovery software on there, our image manager software on there, and then they'll just, you know, manage the backup images stored there.
Are the snapshots incremental, like change blocks and things of that nature?
Yep.
And I was going to ask, are you doing any data deduplication at the on-premises storage?
So not deduplication as the industry knows it. The way that we do our incrementals is literally only taking data that's changed as time goes on. So you know, when you can
change, is it a block level or
it's
a
block
file level? Or
I say sector level, but at block level is what we're talking about. I mean, the way I like to envision it is, you know, you got your ones and zeros spread out all across your volume. You know, you make one change in a Word document, there's going to be a small rearranging of those bits and bytes, right? We're going to pick up on that, and that's what we're saving.
So in a VM environment, you support vvols type data, or how does that work?
So we actually treat that data as if it's physical storage. I mean, when we take a snapshot, we're looking at the volumes as they've been set up within the virtual machine. So again, you know, if our agent lives in a world of Windows and says, I'm in a Windows environment, I'm running as a service right now, I can see my storage. As far as I'm concerned, these are ones and zeros just like I'd see them on a physical machine. You know, this is an NTFS formatted volume. Okay, well, I'm treating this like it's NTFS, and that's how I'm going to snapshot it.
So are there thoughts then to maybe leverage some of those, like APIs and stuff put forth from VMware?
Yes.
To take advantage of some of that stuff, like change block tracking and the IO filtering? And
There is.
Yeah. Because right now, you're just in the VM, right?
We are.
And that's it. That's all you see.
That's what we're doing right now. Yeah, great question.
You mentioned NTFS, so like say within different Windows or Linux operating systems, do you have a whole swathe of file systems that you support, or is it specific ones? And like say if it was REFS, could you do things like data deduplication in the OS and then still support that with your.
Right. So so we support just about any Windows file system. Okay. We can and any Linux file system for that matter as well. What's the one that was just released in 2016? It was is it the REFS?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're working on support for REFS. So we're not actually supporting REFS file systems right now.
I'll just because I have to. On the Linux side, ZFS support, is that it there?
NFS?
ZFS. ZFS.
Oh,
Sorry,
ZFS.
the Canadian in me is getting my T's and my F's confused.
So my understanding is yes. I myself personally have not worked with any ZFS environments, but I believe it is.
Okay.
So
Yeah, which brings to mind things like Oracle databases and maybe, some high performance computing issues. And along those same lines, I'm curious about encryption.
Okay.
If it's encrypted on the source, I imagine it's encrypted on the target or the destination.
Yeah. Okay. So if it's encrypted at the source, again, we're capturing it at the sector level. Usually there's a software layer involved before the user is trying to interact with the data. And so, that's usually where the encryption happens. So when we take a snapshot, once you've got that snapshot, that same encryption no longer applies within the backup image that we create. But we do encrypt the image itself. So we have the option to encrypt the backup file that we're actually generating.
But wait, I'm not quite sure I understand. You're saying that the encryption, as the image gets taken, disappears?
Yeah. Okay. This is my understanding of encryption. I'm not really an encryption expert, but so the way that this works, maybe this can actually help you out. So when we take a backup, when we take our snapshot and we're going to create our backup, all right, again, we're snapshotting at the sector level. We're looking at the ones and zeros, the way that they exist. So it's looking past anything that might get in the way. We're seeing how everything looks across the volume, and we're simply snapshotting it, ones and zeros, and that's what we collect. Now, my understanding with encryption is that in order for there to be the encryption is more than anything else. It's a software layer as you try to get that data.
Because there are encrypted drives as well. And if it's actually encrypted at a hardware level, then...
Right. Yeah, but they're operating at the VM level.
So they're seeing,
Their data they're seeing is plain text. It's not encrypted regardless of whether the software or drive encrypted.
Interesting though, if you were using something like BitLocker, which might rely on a TPM in the host, and then you go into the cloud, then you probably, as long as you got a copy of your key for BitLocker, you'd be able to unencrypt it once you.
Who manages the encryption keys for? Is each customer allowed to do their own encryption keys, or do you guys do that?
So when we encrypt our backup data, then it is the client would perform. They manage the key themselves. They essentially create the password. They create the software key or the password key, and it's something that can be performed within the application itself. So that's a good question.
What about application-aware backups like with SQL?
Application-aware backup? Oh yeah, we work within VSS, and so a lot of that's handled automatically. We don't have any additional plugins. Another great thing about the software is it is actually very simple to use. It's very straightforward. You install it and you essentially let it go. If you're dealing with SQL, if you're dealing with Exchange, SharePoint, any of these that oftentimes you got to worry about. Okay, how's it going to handle itself when it takes a backup? We work within VSX. We actually have a VSS provider that actually launches at the time that we take our snapshot. And so it simply makes an announcement within VSS and says, okay, I'm taking a backup. If VSS is enabled, if I have a SQL server here, I want you to request the database, and all that process will be done automatically. We actually don't do it at all. We simply say, we announce through VSS, we're taking a backup, so do what you got to do. And it gets handled.
What about restoration? Can you restore a single SQL database, or is it a whole VM?
You can. You absolutely can. So we have the ability. Once you've got a backup image or a backup image chain running, we have the ability to open up at any point within that backup chain. A point in time that you want to see that data.
Yeah.
If it's a matter of there's an old database file in there I want to restore. You'll just open up. We call it mounting. You'll mount the backup image at that point in time. You'll then be able to browse through it, find that file that you need. You can then import it straight into SQL at that point. So that's a great question. Man, this is fantastic. My wife doesn't even talk to me this much. So.
Tell me.